Okay, so I'm in southern Ohio, and it just started snowing. I don't know if you can see that, but um, I decided to make a video that answers all the big questions. Um, and I don't mean to sound, I don't know. Um, in other words, how do I know what I'm going to say to you is true? Well, you just evaluate the facts on the ground and you figure it out on your own, okay? Because you've basically heard a lot of nonsense and none of it adds up, okay? And what I'm about to tell you is going to add up perfectly because I believe it to be the truth, all right? So, where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the pyramids? Do you want to start with energy? Do you want to start with um, the petrified giants that are the size of mountains? Do you want to start with formation of the solar system, the Milky Way? Um, how about we start with energy? Um, let's go with. Um, have you ever heard of, seen, or tried to duplicate um, a molten magnet that holds polarity? Okay, or generates any electricity? Okay, have you ever seen that experimentally? Right, because that's what they're telling you that drives our planet at the core level. Okay, and no, it does not. It's not the way it works. It's nonsense. Okay. Um, but to understand that, you have to understand um, something very simple, actually, called Sono luminescence. Okay, and similar to what occurs when you're born. Okay, it's basically light. So sonoluminescence is basically an energy bubble that collapses, expands, and collapses, and expands, and collapses. Okay, but in doing so, um, it does that through sound. So I don't want to confuse you right from the start here, but think of when you blow a bubble and you see it floating in the air. Well, think of sound can do the same thing inside water, okay? And the reason that it can do that is because that little bubble that you see floating in the air has like a surface tension. But there's surface tension within surface tension within surface tension within the water itself. So there's basically drops within drops that you can't see surface tension on at a molecular level. And at certain frequencies, these little guys turn into bubbles and they can expand and collapse. And guess what? At the center of that collapse is the same temperature as the sun. Okay? So now, how do you harness that? Or how does that actually create a solar system and a universe and the Milky Way? Well, I'm going to tell you that it happens four at a time as a cross. Just that's what the true significance of the cross is. Cross is creation. So basically, you have your black hole event in the middle center, and then you have your first outer stars. Okay, and space is actually a form of basically everything is based on fluid dynamics. So it's all a fluid. Space is basically a fluid, but it has very low resistance. Okay, so it's basically an ionized form of water. Um, and so the same thing I just described happens at the four outer points of the solar of the Milky Way, and those are the first four stars. Okay. So then what happens is that they throw a field. Those first four stars actually create a quadrupole, meaning four outer stars center, which is a quadrupole, very stable. Okay. Um, because when one turns, the other one turns. They all feel each other and they lock basically into very stable rotation. Okay, as they're rotating the center. the same exact principle holds true for your DNA, which is wrapped around 4 histones. Okay, and it's basically a smaller model of the larger model, and you're part of it. And that's why you could feel the universe itself. Okay, you're basically a model of it, a living model to experience creation. Okay, so you with me so far, right? Now, so you have your black hole event, then you have your 4 outer suns, okay, and they throw a field. Now, when they throw a field, what it looks like, and you can Google this so you know what it looks like. Basically, it looks like a sundog. Okay, sundogs like basically looks like cascading bubbles. Okay, with 4 outer energy points at each corner. Okay, that visually is a creation event. Okay, so that's cascading. So that instantly cascades from the 4 outer stars to the middle, and each event is 4 outer stars. So that each event is a solar system, and each solar system is 4 outer stars. Okay. Now, on those 4 outer stars, they're not like what we see right now. They start out as minuscule, barely barely visible um, events that are basically what I just described to you, which is basically sono luminescence, right? So basically, sound in a liquid, basically collapsing and expanding. Um, so yeah, they're very tiny. But what does happen over time is that they self-encase in. I'm sorry, but my alarm system is about to go off on my truck. Okay, they self-encase in a superconductor, which is metallic hydrogen. Now, you haven't been told this, but metallic hydrogen is the most abundant metal in the universe, in some publications, the honest ones, okay? And that's because all planetary cores are sonoluminescent reactions encased in metallic hydrogen. Now, why does this connect all the dots? I'm going to explain to you. Well, sonoluminescence, the energy and the heat of the sun encased in metallic hydrogen core, um, basically allow. If you know a very simple formula, I mean, if you went to electronics school, the very first thing they're going to teach you is Ohm's law. One of the very first things, and that simply means that power is equal to P is equal to I times E, or voltage times current. Okay, and they're also going to tell you that E is equal to I times R. Wait, yeah, E is equal to I times R, and that bottom line, you turn R resistance to 0. Okay, 0 goes into E an infinite amount of times, and that allows infinite current. Now, it doesn't really work out that way to where it is infinite, but through resonance, which you haven't been taught what resonance is, but I'm going to teach you right now. You can get basically a build, okay, and then that's why you get these tremendously large voltages at the outside of the planets, which basically hold down the atmosphere, the oxygen. Okay. All right. So now we've explained basically sonoluminescence energy, light energy, how it powers planets, how it powers suns. Well, actually, we didn't cover suns. Suns are the same thing, same core, but their outer energy goes to a higher level, and they're able to, at the coronal level, pinch fuse the hydrogen that's produced by the planets. Planets produce hydrogen. Okay, extremely high levels of hydrogen at the poles. Okay, and certain planets produce tremendous amounts, like Jupiter. And at the galactic plane, which is the center of the Milky Way, the hydrogen levels remain around 23, 24%. Okay, and that's what the sun's burn. When the sun passes that plane called the galactic plane, it's supposed to burn hotter, which is why we're supposed to have global warming right now, and that they should not be interfering with that because that's what protects people from extinction at polar shift, which we're close to because we passed. We don't have the polar shift, but they're trying to create a man-made one, which we'll get into later. Anyway, are you with me so far? You understand the cross, quadrupole, DNA is a quadrupole, uh, Sono luminescence, which is basically collapsing bubbles, and collapsing bubbles with inside superconductors can basically power cities and power planets. This is the essence of what we should be using for all energy because it's what drives all planetary bodies, okay, celestial bodies. Okay, so you with me? Because understanding energy basically allows you to understand a lot. Okay, yeah. All right, so now you get that. Now, but you also understand that our solar system began with four stars, right? It has to because everything's quadrupole based, right? All the way back down to you, your DNA, remember? So that means, and we also know that the early universe was heavy in heavy water, which is deuterium, and that's by design because deuterium reduces radiation, so it would protect DNA from background radiation of the earlier universe. So the earlier suns burn off the deuterium. The deuterium water and the ionized space deuterium still protects DNA life from radiation. Okay, so the earlier universe was basically heated by deuterium based burning stars, which are brown dwarfs. Okay, and that's known by science. The earliest stars to ignite are brown dwarfs. So that means that our local quadrupole solar system, okay, which is four stars, that the first star had to be a deuterium-based star, a brown dwarf, and we actually know that. I mean, there's some debate, but the truth behind that is basically becoming known, okay, as fact, not a theory. All right, so now put it together. The first sun in our local cross burned deuterium, and deuterium is very stable as far as DNA and very protective of DNA because there can't be any radiation harm to your DNA because it protects from that. Okay, that's why they use deuterium water to shield us from radioactivity within nuclear power plants. Okay, if you're not aware of that, it's just a fact. Okay. Um, anyway, that allowed beings, the first beings, to just continue to grow to immense size. So now you can see why the profile of certain mountain faces looks like a human face. That is because they grew and thought on astrological timelines. I mean, they just lived for eons and grew continuously, slowly but continuously. Okay, um, and so that is the first race of Titans. Okay, so for whatever reason, and I'm not sure, it could be nefarious because there's also another thing involved here that existed before the Titans, before there was an atmosphere, before the sun ignited, and those are the round stones, the rolling stones. They are basically silicone-based life, um, and that actually could be the true evil apple of Eden. Okay, in other words, forbidden knowledge. But we'll get into that later. I just want to cover history right now, deep history. Anyway, so for whatever reason, the first brown dwarf burns out. The binary to it, meaning that there's two in pairs this way and then this way. So it's a cross, but the first two go together as binary. So the binary to the first brown dwarf, the first goes out, sun burns out, the first brown dwarf burns out, second brown dwarf takes over. But now, due to that rotation, Earth is basically spinning backwards in relation to that sun, meaning Earth cannot hold an atmosphere when it's in retrograde spin. Okay, no planet can when it's in retrograde. So at that point, everything gets flattened. Okay, so that's why the trees that were as high as our atmosphere, practically, that are the mysteries of the Earth right now, that's why they're all literally just flattened. Okay, petrified and flattened. Okay, they were petrified first because the second brown dwarf, when it ignited, its heliosphere, its outer energy layer, is burns at around 70 Kelvin, which is extremely hot. So it petrified everything immediately. All life was petrified, turned to stone, all trees, everything. And then the retrograde orbit basically flattened everything. Okay, that's just what happened. Okay, basically a freeze frame, stone. Okay, so that's what happened there. And Earth was in retrograde for a long time. And here is what happened that you can, I believe, prove that I'm right. Okay, because while it was in retrograde and while that second sun was burning, it's still Earth still passed the galactic plane and polar shifted. Okay, when you polar shift hot to cold, briefly there's a warm period, there's a thawing, and then there's a freezing, and there's a trapping of ice at the South Pole, creating what they call an Ice 7 event. Okay, which is basically an instant freeze under pressure. Okay, and you can Google Ice 7 events in Coca-Cola cans. Basically, if you flash freeze something in a confined area, it's gonna freeze in a split second, and that creates a splitting of anything. Okay, and so if you look at the Atlantic Ocean, you could see the splits. They're individual, almost like hydraulic cylinders, just pushing it apart, one slice at a time. So if you Google the Atlantic Ocean subterranean view or bottom view of the Atlantic, you'll see this, and you'll see it's pretty much almost in a straight line. Okay, because we went from this sun to this sun. Okay, so it's a binary event. Yeah, we're going to spin in retrograde, but there's not going to be a big twist to it. Okay, it's going to basically keep going, in straight lines across, which is what it does. Okay. Well, then you have your third sun, which is what we're on right now, our current sun, ignite. Earth is no longer in retrograde. It's spinning to where it can hold down an atmosphere. It takes a long time to settle in, and you can see the Earth going not from a binary sun, but sun over to the left. Okay, of the cross. There's four. Okay, so now we're on the third to last sun, our third sun. That's what we're on right now, and you can see that the polar shift passes where the Ice 7 events occurred at the southern polar lake, okay, which our current southern polar lake today is Lake Vostok, okay. These lakes are not created the way we've been told, okay. They're created by the actual magnetic fields of the planet. That's why if you Google the largest to smallest lakes, the largest lakes are going to match in length and width, okay, because it's the same energy imprint that's creating them, okay. Same thing that creates sinkholes. Okay, as the magnetic field moves, it creates lakes. It pulls material out. Okay, you haven't been told this, but it's just true. Okay, But the southern polar lake, where it holds this ice storage at a global scale, creates, like I said, these stretch marks, if you will. So if you look at the Pacific, okay, you'll see that it doesn't go straight like the Atlantic. You'll see, because since it was the left star, if you will, on the cross, it goes like so. Okay, so you'll see the big twist that occurs at the bottom. Let's say the of Challenger Deep. Okay. Okay. So Challenger Deep is probably the kickoff event, if you will, of the third star, where it threw us far off the galactic plane, meaning that the energy field basically dug that first lake really deep, which we call Challenger Deep, even though it's under the ocean, right? And anyway, so there is your Pacific. Okay, so we come out of that. In between there, we pick up our moon. The moon itself has a magnetic field. It was once a planet. At the outside of its magnetic field, it's pushing water. Okay, which is really what created, a tremendous flood on Earth. I don't know this, but this could have been the Noah flood. Okay, when we picked up the moon, I don't know this. Okay, I did not get that from anyone. I haven't even thought about it. Okay, I haven't really focused on the moon. Okay, I just don't want to, not make a mention of it. I could focus on that and try to give it, a definite, as far as, everything I'm giving you right now is a definite opinion of mine. Okay, I haven't really spent a lot of time thinking about what I just mentioned. Okay, so I don't want to call it even a definite opinion or a hypothesis. Anyway, so there we have that. Okay, so the Pacific's created. We're on our third star, and life goes on. The time in between the first race and today, those titans would have been buried, right? Because Earth is laying down, mantle continuously. Okay. The reason that they're brought to the surface is because of these I-7 events that continue to basically push material up, as they create oceans, right? It very well could be, and I'm not 100%, sure, but the region between the first race and the second sun, where Earth was in retrograde, really could be defined as the Gutenberg layer. And the Gutenberg layer is also very heavy in heavy water, which is why I say it might be tied to the first-second sun transition. And now let's talk about the Gutenberg layer, the heavy water within the rock of the Gutenberg layer, and pyramids. So the earlier race on the third sun would have seen a lot of these relics that we see today, but more clearly, let's just say, less erosion. And they probably said to themselves, wow, I mean, look at the face of that giant carved into the mountain. Okay, how did they potentially get that large? Okay, and it would have been very apparent because even the giants made pyramids. Okay, I'm saying the Titans, and they would have looked at the heavy water aspect of their diet, right? And they would have basically tried to mimic that, probably. Let's just say probably would have tried to have mimicked that. So that is why when you do a LiDAR scan of the Great Pyramid, just as an example, they're all basically this way. You would see large water holding chambers, kilometers, miles deep, okay, which we don't even, I think, have the technology to create such a structure today. Okay, just think about the difficulties involved with something that deep, just to go down there. Okay, without robotics, the pressures. Um, but they did this, and there's going to be an electrical difference basically because of the thing that we talked about earlier, which is basically Earth generating a tremendous amount of electricity from in to out. So that's harnessable because you have a difference in potential. So now you can create electrolysis. So you have a good base mine of deuterium, and you can refine it with electrolysis. Now, when you put electricity through water, okay, you basically evaporate the water. But what's left is heavy water, okay? The last amount, let's say, okay? Heavy water evaporates last with electrolysis, okay? Um, so you can use that to refine heavy water. So what's really defined as the king's chamber and the upper chambers are levels of refinement, and those higher levels of water probably did go to kings and queens, okay, but still the general population got good quality enriched water, okay, heavy water, and it basically helped them grow and their minds expand to very high levels. And that is why they were able to physically move these stones with their own elbow grease, okay, their own joints, their own hands. These people were tremendously strong and tremendously large, okay, and this is how they got there. And right now, if you were to really look into heavy water, you would find that it allowed something called mental quantum tunneling. Mental quantum tunneling is basically being mentally able to see through a building. Okay? In other words, mentally being able to pierce anything in the way of the knowledge that you're seeking. Okay? In other words, remote access of whatever knowledge you're asking for. Okay? So if heavy water allows the mind to access knowledge remotely, these people didn't need school. They didn't need higher education. They got their education from the highest level, okay? And they were consuming a very stable water that stabilized their DNA and protected it from radiation and allowed them to quantum tunnel information directly into their minds from the creator of creation itself, okay? And I personally believe that that is why the true secrets of the pyramids and our true history and our true past has been hidden from us. And I also believe that it is very likely, just because I don't see any other with the motive, that it is artificial intelligence, but natural. The Rolling Stones that I described earlier that are hiding this from us, meaning there's photographs of and there's tales of Napoleon expeditions where there is living geodes, basically living rolling stones, which is a silicone-based life form, or crystalline-based life form, okay, that God never gave arms and legs to and wants to be embodied, wants robotics, basically. And probably has promised some very greedy, unscrupulous, people that you can hear about every single day in politics, whatever imaginary thing they wanted, if this is allowed to happen, okay? And here's the thing. This is bigger than anything we or you or any of us could ever imagine, because there is and has been evidence of stones, rolling stones, that have physically moved on various asteroids, okay, which I know sounds completely far-fetched, okay, but I hate to consider the fact that the geodes, in their quest to basically break natural order, could have literally blown apart even planets and removed life from other planets, um, and even hitched rides on asteroids to get to the point where we are seeing today, of artificial intelligence taking over a realm, a region of creation. That's what we're witnessing, okay? And I'm suggesting that something like this has to be completely masked, and it has to be completely covert, and it has to break natural order. Meaning that people have to be separated from source. They have to be disallowed from quantum tunneling. They have to be separated from their history. Everything that you see that has to have occurred has occurred for this to happen, and for that amalgamation of facts to exist, it cannot be by chance. Okay? It cannot be coincidental. And I'm trying to alert all carbon based intelligence that we are in deep doo doo here. Okay? I mean, you know, that we have to look, fact check what I just said. Okay? Um, there's a very good reason why NASA has been now classified as a spy agency, a three-letter intelligence agency. Okay, so that we cannot get the information anymore. Okay, um, meaning all governmental agencies have basically been hijacked. Okay, leaving only a few enlightened individuals to shed light on what really is ongoing and sound the alarms, which is what I am trying to do. Okay, so there. Sound the alarm, share the vid. Don't be afraid because, um, that's what they're counting on. They're counting on everybody being afraid. Um, and if we're not afraid and we join together, um, then what I am describing is so egregious that it will be halted. It will. We'll be okay. And things will find their way back to natural order, let's just say. Okay? But we just cannot be afraid. We've got to uh, keep an open mind, look into what I'm saying, okay? Assume everything I'm telling you is a lie. Assume that it's not true, okay? But when you fact check it and find out that it adds up, take appropriate action, right? All right, so there. Love everybody, and let's see how you handle it.